name, I will provide security only. The simple thing is, till this point we saw the major thing is business service and proxy service. Creation of business service is always based on external service URL, and proxy service we are getting based on XSD. The first thing, the next based on XSD I need to create visual, then based on visual I am getting proxy service. So proxy service is entry point for my application. Business service is talking to multiple so using business service I can communicate to multiple endpoint systems. So it's a simple thing. In proxy we have message flow. In proxy we have message flow. Message flow we are using multiple actions, like we use the logging actions, log, report. Apart from log, report, we use the routing actions. Suppose route inside route we place dynamic routing, and routing two options we place. Apart from this we use publish. Publish is by default asynchronous. So if you want to make it asynchronous, we change the policy QoS policy to exactly once. By default it's the best effort. So, but by default, dynamic routing the QoS policy of routing and dynamic routing is the best effort always. By default, it's the best effort. The publish and service call. One more thing is we saw service call to communicate synchronous operations. Publish to call one-way communication. So these kind of scenarios we saw. Apart from this, we saw error handlers. Error handler we can apply on stage level, pipeline pair level, proxy level. Apart from proxy, we have a system error or service error. So the one more flow is routing. From routing to proxy to system error, service error. So these things we saw till this point. So dynamic routing and dynamic publish scenario, dynamically we pass the URL to communicate with service at runtime. So these are the things. So apart from this, we have one more thing is the major thing is security. What is security? The purpose of security. Suppose I am sending some kind of request to business service. So business service, or someone is sending request to my proxy service. Someone is sending request to my proxy service, or I am communicating to external source using business service. So suppose the simple example, the first example I can say here. I'm going with Notepad. The first example I can say. We are using business service. BS to communicate external sources. Okay, external sources are using some kind of URL communication using URL. Okay, URL is the communication point. Here we are using to communicate external sources. External services, simple thing. So in that scenario, the simple thing is external service is expecting some kind of authentication. Some kind of authentication. Apart from authentication, so we can do message level protection also. Apart from authentication, we can do message level protection also. Suppose message level protection means exactly I can say protection. Message level protection exactly we can say the thing is encryption and decryption. So spelling may be wrong. Don't bad about it. So the encryption or decryption. So we have to do encryption. The second option is or we need to do decryption. So the simple thing is encryption and decryption. So some kind of authentication. So the first one is authentication, encryption or decryption. Some kind of SSL security, secure socket layer, SSL. So HTTP, yes. SSL communication. Apart from this, SAML communication. If you go to SAML, security SSL markup language. Security SSL markup language. Something is SAML. Let's say SAML. Simple SAML. SAML. It stands for security assertion markup language. So we have multiple things here, like this. So the first and foremost thing I'm explaining today, some kind of authentication. The prior to that, I'm using by default. If you go to any kind of proxy service, prior to that, before to security policies, I'm going to explain. The first thing is some kind of authentication. If you go to business service or proxy service, we have the concept called authentication. Authentication. So the authentication. So authentication, we have multiple things here. Basic authentication, none. So right now what we are using is none. So apart from that we have none. Basic, certificate based. We have one more thing, I think, certificate based. So right now I'm going to explain about basic authentication. Basic authentication, the simple meaning of basic authentication is simple. Suppose if you want to communicate to any proxy service or business service, we have to pass some kind of user information. The user should be available in my WebLogic server. Apart from that, my user should be admin user. The two things are the simple. I'm talking about basic authentication. The basic authentication I can apply on business service, at the same time I can apply on proxy service. Okay. So here we have two options. So the by default is none. So the second thing is we have basic authentication. If I select the basic authentication while communicating to business service or proxy service, we have to send the authentication information. Simple. I need to pass a username and password. My username and password should be in WebLogic server. At the same time, my username and my user should be admin user. Then only I can able to communicate to proxy service or business service using the user. So the simple one more question here. So I'm working last point. So the simple thing is, so if you want to communicate proxy service or business service, I can set the basic authentication on proxy service level and business service level. But if I want to call that proxy service or business service, I have to pass the username and password. The user should be available in WebLogic server. The second thing, the user should be available in my WebLogic server. The second thing is my user should be admin user. See, by default WebLogic is admin user. So we can use WebLogic. Apart from WebLogic, we can create multiple users in a WebLogic server. So multiple users in server. So the user should be available in web server. Apart from that server, that one, it has to be admin user. Then only I can use that user to communicate to proxy service. This username and password I need to send while calling the business service or proxy service. Okay, till this point, okay, any doubts?
Okay, sir, little bit okay.
So little bit not. If you have any doubts, let me know. I will repeat once again.
అర్థం కాలేదు సార్. ఏమవుతుందంటే we can create authentication to proxy service and business service.
We can set the authentication. It's not a creation.
We can set the authentication to business service or proxy service.
Okay.
Setting that the user should be.
So no, not like this. The simple thing is the setting. We can set the authentication, basic authentication for either proxy service or business service. That's fine. The second point is, if I want to, so general, if you go to any kind of application, after completion of deployment, I'm sending some kind of request. Am I correct? I'm sending some kind of request. So proxy service, I'm sending some kind of request. So I'm not doing anything. Simple. I'm filling the values. I'm calling the service. Okay, that's the thing is happening till this point. But right now, if I set the authentication level to basic authentication, so apart from request, I need to send my user information.
Okay.
So the user information means I need to pass the username and password to communicate that one. If I don't send the username and password, it will throw some kind of error. So that's the basic authentication. But the user should be available in the server. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then the next step is my user should be admin user. If you go to any kind of application, we can have admin users, we can have general users, we can have specific users. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So while sending the request, I need to pass the user information. My user should be available in server. The second step is my user should be admin user. Till this point, okay, any doubts?
No, understood, sir.
Not understood till this. So So I'm not doing anything simple. I will show an example. So then you don't understand, then we'll move to the theoretical part. Okay, first I will explain the example, then we'll move to theoretical part. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So right now I have the user web logic. Okay, right now I have the user web logic. The password is welcome one. What we are using is what I'm saying is we can set the authentication for proxy service. At the same time, I can set the same authentication for business service also. Simple. I'm going to create one application here. My application name is security project. My application name is security. Click on finish. Okay, click on finish. So security. So right now click on this new. I'm getting multiple folders. If you want to get multiple folders, why I need to waste my time? Simple, just copy all these folders, copy and just paste here. Just paste here. So I'm done with that. So if you want to use the business services and everything, you can use. If you don't want to use, just I'm deleting all this. I don't want to use all this. Suppose. So I want to create fresh new things. So delete proxy service also. Delete resources. If you want to delete resources also, delete resources. Simple delete. Yes. I'm deleting all this. I don't want to use. Simple. So these are things. So I'm ready with my folders: business service, business proxy, resources, and next query. So right now I'm getting business service. Right now I'm getting business service. I don't want to use. I don't want to get business service. Existing somewhere a business service is available in other products. The same business service I will use for this application. So I don't want to get any business service. Right now I want to get proxy service. If you want to get proxy service, the simple proxy service I'm creating. The simple proxy service. So the simple thing is I'm getting proxy. So I'm using this one. So I don't want to do this one. Simple. So copy this. Control C first. Copy. Just first step. I'm not using from first step. I'm using from error handler. Error handler. Student this one. Copy. I just paste.
Yes. Copy from this one also. Service call okay. Publish calling one way also okay. You can take any resources.
Anyone is fine, but I'm going with error handler. Error handler also we have three elements. I will get input and output. The total input and total output. It is calling total operation. The one more element is print. Print to communicate print operation. So two operations enough to explain the security and everything. As I don't require the much operations. Okay. So simple. I'm going to. So proxy also I'm coming from this one only. So I need to waste my time. Copy. Paste here. Okay. So now I'm going to student proxy. So before that I need to close all this. I need to close all. So student proxy. So this is some kind of error. So first tab resource student. So click on browse. I need to change this to my location. Okay, browse for the thing, and I don't want to use from first tab. I want to use from security resources student digital. So select the port and click on save. Click on yes. Click on yes and click on this one save. So I'm done with this one. Security is done. So security. So simple. I'm in message flow. What we are doing, we know some kind of a thing. So right now routing and everything we are doing inside this we are doing multiple things. From first step I copied. I think so. That's not a problem. First step. No, it's not required. Shit. Why need to? So main focus on security was why need to focus on this one. So the simple thing is go to error handler. So proxy, just get the proxy, copy, and just place the proxy here, paste. So to xquery files, I need to copy from the same. So xquery. Separate project together. Suppose if you want to check this thing, no reference together. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, correct.
So that's what. So paste. By seeing this, this is the example of security. You can able to understand. Click on paste here. Just so change the student proxy. Go to student proxy. Change the visitor to the select the created one security resources. A student and visitor. Student support port. I'm selecting. Click on yes. Click on save. So I'm done with this one. So if you go to know transport somewhere, transport, go to HTTP transport. There is a concept called authentication. By default, it is none. Am I correct? By default, it is none. Now I am changing this authentication to basic. I'm changing this authentication to basic. I'm not doing anything simple. I'm changing this authentication to basic. So basic, just go to servers. So I didn't do anything much. Simple. I copied the artifacts from error handler. Simple. Copy all the artifacts from error handler. The simple.
Sir, 1 minute. I'm unable to see your screen. Nothing is moving. Can you? Something happened.
Nothing. My side is
I
fine.
can see only.
I can see.
I
No.
think I need to relog in.
Okay, now relog. We'll wait for you.
Okay. So and deploy
Yes, sir.
the application. Deploy the application. Simple. I'm going to SB console. So there's this application. I need to go to SB console. So WebLogic. If we test from WebLogic, welcome one is the thing. So I'm going to I'm going to here Project Explorer. Simple. Calling security. Am I right? Security.
Deploying over.
Deployed. Simple publish only. No, I don't need to do deployment. Am I
Yeah,
right?
I haven't seen that. It's okay. Then.
So then I need to test the application. Simple test the application. To pass a proxy service, I have 3 operations. Security. Just a minute, bit confused here. Sorry. So just a minute. This is a proxy service related to which one? Just a moment. Message flow. No, it's related to this one only. Visual I copied from I think this one. Visual yes. Yes, we're asking something. Visual is copied from the other location. That's what is showing 3 operations. So I don't require this. Simple delete.
So what is displaying on the screen? Is it WebLogic SB console or something else?
It's Eclipse boss.
Okay, WebLogic. I have 2 screens. I'm confused here.
Okay. The simple thing I'm copying from the error handle itself. Resources also copy. Now paste the resources in this one. Paste. So go to student proxy. Change the go to general. Browse for the thing. Simple. I'm done with this one. Browse for the thing. Security, resources, student visitor, and port. I need to select. So now once again I will republish the thing. Publish.
So it is showing cricket board screen.
Wow, you are almost 1 minute back. I changed that one.
Okay, sir. I don't know. Maybe some speed. That's why suddenly it became very slow.
Right now,
Earlier it was fully with the screen.
right now, you can able to see my screen eclipse right now. What I'm seeing.
I can see the.
No, sir.
UK also same problem. Net problem ఉందా మీకు కూడా?
వాడి ప్లేస్ నా ప్లేస్ వేరు వేరు కదా.
ఆ ప్లేస్ వేరు వేరా ఇద్దరిది?
వాడు ఒక పేజీ నేను ఒక పేజీ.
Oh, 2 different locations.
Okay, now I can see published.
Yeah.
Publish. Oh, 1 minute delay. So you can't publish. So publish completed. Simple synchronize. Simple, I'm going to SB console. Go to proxy.
Now what you can see now? Now
I think nothing is moving in my screen. Only publish I can see.
now
Publish.
SB console open now. Us.
SB console is open, boss.
Now some problem with your system, man. Again.
So restart the system and relog in once again. I will wait for it. That's not a problem for me.
1 minute, sir.
Yes, I'm going to SB console to test the application. Simple. So click on launch console. Launch test console. Here I have two operations. One is print, one more is total. So right now I'm checking the condition print or total. That's up to you. Print total. I'm going with print or total. So I'm passing the values. So 56, 56, 56, 56 and 56. Right, of three things. Okay. So if I do execute, what will happen? See, I got 280. I got 280. It's working normal flow, but I set the authentication to basic authentication, but it is working fine. How it is working fine? So as for my words, so we have to pass this some kind of username and password. But I didn't say the username and password, but it is working fine. The simple reason is if you test this application within the console, it will work fine. Without the authentication also, without sending the authentication also, it will work fine. But if the same application, if I test from SOAP UI, so I'm going to here, just copy this, Control C. So go to HTTP, localhost 9001. //, you can plan to paste this one. Visitor. This is my proxy service visitor, security proxy service visitor. Simple copy this. Visitor. Go to SOAP UI. So here I'm getting one more application, project, new SOAP UI project. My project name is security. Name may be anything, that's up to you. Okay. This one, click on, move. Okay. Set to basic authentication, am I correct? So it's none, sorry.
No, sir. Because you have changed the proxy, right?
Yeah.
Again, you have deleted.
Sorry.
Upload a visitor.
Okay, sorry. Change the authentication to basic. Control S. So once again publish. Sorry. Once again publish. Publish is done. It's a synchronize. Publish is done. Simple. I'm going to security right now. So go to proxy service. Click on test console. So print or anything. That's any call anything. That's not a problem for me. ABC. I'm going to ABC. Simple execute. See somewhere it is printed the value or something. It is showing some kind of like this. So inside the response pipeline, stage 1, everything it is showing. Okay. So ABC, the value also printed ABC. So it's working fine without sending the authentication information. The same I will test from so SOAP UI. So same reload the project. Just I'm deleting this one. I'm deleting this one. I'm deleting this one, creating new one. My project name is SOAP project security. Project name is security. I'm creating security. So I need to pass the URL. If you want to pass the URL, just get the URL from here, this location. Control enter. See here, it is asking for authentication. Am I correct? I set the authentication level to basic. So till this point, so I need to pass the username and password. WebLogic, welcome, 1. If you pass the URL, what will happen? It will show the entire visual. Control C, this one, and just I'm going to SOAP UI. Just pass the URL, click on OK. So here also it is asking for authentication. While creating the product, so SOAP UI product is asking for authentication. I have to set the authentication. WebLogic, welcome, 1. Okay. Click on OK. So once again, WebLogic, welcome, 1. Okay. So now I need to call the print operation. If I want to call the print, simple, I'm trying to call the print operation. Simple, click on request. So simple, I'm calling the operation print with the value ABC. So it is saying the request requires user authentication. The request requires user authentication. I need to set the user authentication. Some kind of authentication I need to pass. So I set my proxy level authentication. I change it to basic authentication. Okay. So I need to set I need to pass some kind of authentication. Where I need to pass authentication? If you want to pass authentication for the request, somewhere see that left request properties. We're saying request properties. Inside request properties, I have username and password. Am I correct? Username and password. Here in the username, I need to fill WebLogic. Username I need to fill WebLogic, and password I need to fill welcome 1. Okay. So now test the application. I didn't get a negative response, but somewhere if you see the the value is printed. See here. The value is printed ABC and everything is done. So if you want to test the same for the total response also, total also, click on request. So set the authentication, the username and password. Username is WebLogic, and password is welcome 1. I have to set. Enter. Just pass the values. My value should be greater than 50, greater than 50, 51. I'm passing all 51s. Okay, click on execute. So it's working. It's sending the response 255. Suppose if I remove these two, Control N. Try to execute the same. Right now. It's showing same. Enter request user authentication. Just I need to pass the user authentication in the form of username and password. So username should be WebLogic and password should be WebLogic welcome 1. The user is available. WebLogic user is available in my server. Am I correct? And my WebLogic user is admin. So this is the basic authentication I can set for proxy service. At the same time, the same basic authentication I can set for business service also. So which business service I am calling here? Simple, if you go to student proxy, check the business service. Which business service I am calling? So check for the thing. I am calling the business service first tab business student BS I am calling. So here my first tab, go to first tab business student BS. Okay, this is the business service I am calling. Okay, go to HTTP transport. Here we have the option authentication basic. So I will change the authentication to basic. That's fine, but it is showing errors. See, it is asking for some kind of service account. Why I need to create service account? Proxy service scenario, it is not asked. It didn't ask the service account, but here why it is asking. So proxy service scenario, simple thing is I am sending the request. While sending the request, I can set the username and password. But a business service scenario, the business service is called by proxy service. Business service is called by proxy service. I am not sending any kind of request to business service. That's what we are creating. We have to create service account. If you want to create service account means simple. Service account contains multiple options. I will explain all the options. First, I need to create service account. If you want to create service accounts, first I need to create one folder. My folder name is service accounts. Okay, service account. So inside service account, right click on service accounts, click on new, go to somewhere we'll see service account.
Sir,
Service.
I have missed that. Can you please explain again?
So
On the business service, we have gone to HTTP transport. There we have changed the authentication to none. After that,
none,
sorry, we
basic,
have changed to basic. Then
basic. After basic, no, it is expecting some kind of service account. See here, the service account is mandatory, it's enabled. Am I correct? So it's a service. I need to create a service account. If you want to create service account, first I need to create a folder service accounts. So all service accounts will place in this
so
folder.
what is being a service account, sir?
So that's what I'm saying. So while creating service account, I will explain the entire thing. Okay.
Okay, sir.
To create service account, right click on service account folder, click on new, select the service account. Provide the name to some kind of authentication. Some kind of authentication. Just authentication. Click on finish. Click on finish. So see here. So in the service account, the first one is description. Description may be anything. We can provide any kind of description. That's a simple display purpose only. The next thing is required types, resource types. I have two things. Resource type. The second thing is resource type. I need to select either pass-through or static or mapping. The first one is pass-through. If I use pass-through, what will happen? No, whatever the data, whatever the username and password we provided to proxy service, the same username and password it will use while calling business service. So simple, I'm writing the notes here. Service accounts. Okay. In the service accounts, we have the first option is description. The second option is resource types. So if resource type, we have multiple options. The first option is pass through. Please. The second option is pass. The first option is pass through. If I use pass through, what will happen? No, it uses the username and password. It uses the user and password. What we provided to proxy service. The same it will use. If I use pass through. So the second option is static. In the static, if I select the static, no, it will ask for username, password, and confirm password. It will ask for, in the static scenario, we have to provide username and password. Maximum, if you go to real time, we will use pass through only. We never use static one. Static one is not required. So the simple thing is, so if I use pass through, what will happen? No, the proxy service information. For the proxy service, I am sending some kind of basic authentication. I am sending some kind of username and password for basic authentication. The same it will use if I use the pass through. But the simple scenario, when I need to go with static. Suppose the simple thing I can say here. Suppose I am not using the basic authentication for proxy service. In that scenario, I need to go with static. Understand? Any doubts?
Understand.
So if I use the pass through, what will happen? No, whatever the request. So my business service is getting request from proxy service. My proxy service also, while sending the request to proxy service, my proxy service also expecting some kind of basic authentication. The same information it will use for my business service. But sometimes I will set the basic authentication for business service only. Sometimes I don't provide the basic authentication for proxy service. So if I don't use the basic authentication for proxy service, I don't get any kind of username and password values. Am I correct? In that scenario, we will go with the static authentication. To static authentication scenario, we have to provide user and password and confirm password. So right now, the first example, I'm going with pass through only. I don't want to create anything, just I'm going with pass through. Simple, Control S, save the authentication file. Now go to business service, select the authentication, change the thing to basic and select the authentication, browse. This one, security service accounts. I'm done with this one. So simple, I'm deploying this application. So repub publish. So apart from static and pass through, we have one more option called mapping. So mapping, one more option called mapping. So where I need to use mapping? The simple my endpoint, my proxy service and my endpoint service in different locations. So simple example, simple scenario I can say. So right now the entire application is in the same server. Am I correct? My service is in the same location. My business service also in the same location. My proxy service also in the same location. Suppose the simple scenario, my endpoint service, the student service, what we are talking, the endpoint service is in different location. Suppose, or my business service is in different location. So there we will use the mapping. Simple. If I select the mapping, what will happen? No, simple. It will ask for two things: remote users. What is the local user mapping? What is the remote user? Use the page to enter the information for service account resource. What is the remote user and what is the local user? So what do you mean by remote user and what do you mean by local user? So local system, my user is WebLogic and password is welcome one. Am I correct? So my local username is WebLogic and password is welcome one. But if you go to the other service, suppose my business service is in the next server, not in the same server. Suppose my proxy service is in current domain and my business service is in other domain. Suppose in that scenario we have to use the mapping. So here local user is WebLogic, the corresponding mapping, which user I need to map to. So that user I need to provide. Suppose if you go to the remote server, no, if I don't have the WebLogic server, I have the different user with the different name. Those things we will map here. Maximum if you go to real time, no, we will use pass through or static. We never use mapping. Maximum my business service and proxy service always available in same location. If I'm applying the basic authentication for proxy service, if I'm applying the basic authentication for business service, in that scenario we'll use pass through. If I'm not applying the basic authentication for proxy service, I'm using for only business service, in that scenario we will go with static value. So if my business service and proxy service are in different servers, deployed in different servers, if I want to do some kind of communication, in that scenario we'll go with mapping. Mapping we'll never use in real time. Maximum I will go with pass through or static. So my business service and proxy service too are using the basic authentication. In that scenario I will go with pass through. If my business service only using the authentication or the basic authentication, then I need to go with static. Okay, static scenario simple. I need to provide the username and password.
Yes, sir.
So just read it, publish the thing once again. So after completion of publish, just send it as the application. Just I'm testing from SOAP UI. I'm not using the console. So I'm done with this is synchronized. Simply I'm going to SOAP service. So my authentication, I'm setting the authentication to WebLogic. Okay. So and my password I'm setting to welcome one. Okay. Simple test the application. Click on. So I got the response. So I use the authentication. I use the service account resource type. I use that pass through. If I use pass through, what will happen? No, whatever the authentication information I pass to proxy service, the same authentication it will use for business service. Okay. So here two levels I set the authentication. Proxy service I set the authentication to basic. At the same time, business service also I set the authentication to basic. So, but business service level, I created a service account with the resource type pass through. If I set the resource type pass through, what will happen? No, it uses the authentication of proxy service. It uses the authentication information, not authentication. It uses the authentication information of proxy service to communicate business service. Okay, till this point, okay. Any doubts?
Okay, sir.
Do you need to continue or do you need to close the session? That's up to you. So if you want to practice and we will come tomorrow. No, tomorrow I will continue the remaining security policies.
If you give videos, we will practice and come back, sir.
So today, by some point, whatever maybe you go to bed, no. So whatever maybe some today end of the events. Tomorrow morning you check the thing. You have the videos in place. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I will close this. So maybe tomorrow I will continue the security. So the next I need to close the security in the OWSM policy. OWSM I have to close 3 to 4 examples. Tomorrow I will close that one OWSM, and day after tomorrow I will continue with the transport and everything. Okay.
Sir, in result,
Yeah.
you stop the video, sir. Video not required.
Okay.
Stop the video.